I need you to do something for me. I need you to set aside what you think you know. Forget the blurry videos, the campfire stories, the cheesy reality shows. Forget Bigfoot, Sasquatch, all the clumsy names we've given them. I need you to understand that what lives in the mountains is not a myth, and it is not an animal. It is a species. It is an intelligence. And it is waking up. My name is Daniel Hill. For 20 years, I was a senior field biologist for the National Park Service, assigned to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. That was my official title. My unofficial title, the one known only to a handful of people in three-letter agencies, was Anomaly Containment. You've heard the stories. You've read the headlines. Hiker vanishes on Appalachian Trail. Family found mauled by bear. Geological instability closes remote section of park. That was me. I was the one who came in after the search teams failed. I was the one who discovered the bear hair, who identified the sinkhole, who confirmed the rock slide. I was the one who helped the sheriffs and the rangers write their neat, plausible reports. I was, in short, a professional liar, a gatekeeper. I was paid to keep the real world and the other world separate. But the gates are breaking. The lies aren't working anymore. What I'm about to tell you is the truth. It is the last report I ever filed. The one I filed with my own conscience. Because the one I filed with my superiors was another lie. It's a warning. And I am telling you, I am begging you, if you live near the Appalachian Range, you need to listen. This isn't a what-if scenario. This is an it's happening now alert. The media won't tell you. The government will deny it. But the things in the mountains are coming, and millions of people, the tourists in Gatlinburg, the families in Asheville, the retirees in their quiet mountain homes, are living on top of the exits, and there will be no time to escape. It started for me on October 12th, 2024. The call came at 2 a.m. It wasn't my park supervisor. It was a man named Alexander Williams, a name I knew only as a routing number from the Department of the Interior. He was the one who signed the checks for my special projects budget. "Daniel," he said. His voice was all gravel and sleepless nights. "We have a situation, Klingen's Dome." "A hiker?" I asked, already pulling on my boots. "No. We have a seismic event. A new fissure opened up on the North Ridge. Zone 4. It's active." My blood went cold. Zone 4 was a local name. We called it the Dead Zone. It was a 50-square-mile patch of old-growth forest that was permanently off-limits. The official story was that it was a research area for a rare species of Appalachian fungus. The real reason is that nothing lived there. The animals avoided it. The birds didn't sing. The silence was so heavy it felt like you were underwater. And the smell, a thick, musky, coppery stench that clung to the air, we all knew what it meant. "How active?" I asked. "The hole's breathing, Daniel, and the audio sensors are... well, you need to hear it for yourself." "Get your team." My team. There were 3 of us. My partner, Dr. Eleanor Garcia, was the smartest person I'd ever met. She was a biologist and geologist, the one who could make sense of the how. And then there was Carter Davis. Carter was our tracker, our security, our gut. He was ex-SAR, the kind of man who could track a ghost over bare rock. They were the only 2 people on Earth I trusted. By 4 a.m., we were at the park's private airfield. Our transport was a black, unmarked Bell 407. Our pilot, Jack Howard, didn't even look up as we loaded the gear. He was part of the lie. The gear wasn't standard NPS equipment. We loaded Pelican cases filled with high-gain audio recorders, ground-penetrating radar, thermal drones, and seismic sensors. And we loaded the other gear, 2 AR-10s, a combat shotgun, and enough C4 to level a small building. This wasn't a scientific expedition. It was an armed reconnaissance mission. Jack flew us in low and fast, navigating the pre-dawn fog. The mountains were a dark sleeping giant below us. "Air's heavy up here, Daniel," Jack yelled over the rotors. "Feels thick." He was right. The air was buzzing. It was a feeling I'd come to dread, a low-frequency thrum that you felt in your teeth. Jack set us down in a clearing 5 miles from the coordinates. He wouldn't go any closer. "My sensors are going haywire," he said, his face pale in the cockpit's green glow. "GPS is unreliable. I'll be back at 0600 tomorrow. If you're not at this LZ..." "I can't wait. You understand?" "We understand," I said. "Stay sharp." We stepped out into the dark. The moment the helicopter's rotors faded, the silence crashed down on us. It was absolute. No crickets, no wind, nothing. Just the sound of our own breathing and the crunch of our boots on the frosty ground. And the smell. It was the smell of a zoo's primate house, but multiplied by 1,000. A rank, overpowering stench of wet fur, musk, feces, and something metallic and sharp, like old blood. "It's strong," Carter whispered, chambering around. "Stronger than I've ever smelled it." "It's coming from the fissure," Eleanor said, checking her handheld sensors. "And, Daniel, the air. It's not just the smell. The CO2 levels are high. Way too high. Something is venting." We moved forward single file, Carter in the lead. We walked for 2 hours through the dead silent pre-dawn gloom. The forest here was ancient. Trees 1,000 years old. The undergrowth was so thick in places we had to cut our way through. We found the fissure just as the first gray light of dawn broke the horizon. It wasn't a fissure. It wasn't a sinkhole. It was a hole. It was 100 feet across, a perfect, gaping black maw in the side of the mountain. The ground around it was freshly torn, with the trees ripped out by the roots. It looked like a meteor had struck, but the edges weren't fractured rock. They were clawed, scored. Massive, parallel gouges as if something unimaginably large had dug its way out. A plume of hot, foul-smelling air rose from the opening, visible as steam in the cold morning. My God, Eleanor breathed. The GPR maps never showed this. This is new. This isn't new, Carter said, kneeling at the edge. This is open. Look. He pointed to the mud at the lip of the chasm. It was a highway of tracks, hundreds of them, overlapping, fresh. They were the tracks I'd spent my career explaining away. 18 inches long, 5 toes, bipedal. They're coming and going, Carter said, his voice grim. This is a doorway. And they just kicked it wide open. We set up a command post 100 yards back, in a defensible cluster of boulders. We had 2 jobs, find out what was down there and find out where they were going. Eleanor got to work. She set up a perimeter of seismic sensors and high-gain microphones. Then she prepped the drone. It was a $100,000 piece of military-grade tech, equipped with LiDAR, thermal imaging, and a high-res camera. All right, she said, her fingers flying over the controller. I'm sending the canary in. We watched the feed on the laptop. The drone zipped over the clearing and hovered above the chasm. Descending, Eleanor said. The drone dropped into the darkness. The LiDAR began to paint a picture of the world below. It wasn't a cave. It was a tunnel. A massive, perfectly round tunnel that went straight down for 500 feet, then leveled out. This isn't natural, Eleanor whispered. The walls, they're too smooth. It looks carved, like a subway tunnel. She switched to thermal. The feed dissolved into a nightmare. The tunnel opened into a cavern so vast the LiDAR couldn't find the walls. It was a city. We could see structures, vague, massive shapes, and we could see the heat signatures. Daniel, Eleanor's voice was shaking. Count the signatures. I stared at the screen. They were everywhere. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. Bright man-sized signatures moving in coordinated groups, and larger signatures, massive 9-foot-tall blobs moving among them, seemingly directing them. What are they? I breathed. I don't know, Eleanor said, but they're not all the same. Look, the big ones, they're the Sasquatch, the ones we've tracked, but the smaller ones, they're different. Bipedal, but cruder. Thinner. Grendel, Carter muttered, his eyes glued to the screen. That's what the old stories call them. The servants. The diggers. The drone flew deeper. The audio feed crackled to life. It was a wall of sound. Clicks, grunts, deep, resonant calls to Haddads. It was a language, and underneath it all, thud, 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 thud. It was a sound I'd heard on seismic sensors for years, dismissed as unexplained geological activity. It was the sound of work. It was rhythmic, coordinated. They're digging, I said. They're excavating. Wait, Eleanor said, zooming the drone's camera. There's a wall, with markings. The drone's light hit a massive carved wall. It was covered in symbols, spirals, and lines, but it wasn't just art. It was a map. We could see the outline of the Appalachian Range, and we could see the tunnels. A vast interconnected network beneath the mountains, and there were exits, dozens of them. My blood turned to ice. One of the exits was marked with a symbol. It was pointing directly at the cluster of lights we knew from our maps was Asheville. Another was pointing at the valley holding Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. They've been under us, Eleanor whispered, this entire time. They've been under us. The thud sound was coming from the tunnel marked Asheville. They're expanding, I said. They're not just living here. The feed dissolved into static. We heard a shriek, a sound of metal tearing, and then, from the drone's microphone, a roar so loud it overloaded the system. Canary is down, Eleanor yelled, pulling off her headphones. Something hit it. The three of us looked at each other. The silence of the forest outside was suddenly unbearable. They know we're here, Carter said, checking his rifle. How? Eleanor asked. That was half a mile down. They felt it, Carter said. They knew we were watching. The first rock hit our camp an hour later. It wasn't a rock, it was a boulder. It landed with a whump 10 feet from our tent, a 200-pound piece of granite that had been thrown from the tree line 100 yards away. "Get your gear," I yelled. "We're bugging out, now!" It was too late. The howl that answered me wasn't from one, it was from a dozen. They were all around us. "This isn't a sighting, Daniel," Carter yelled, grabbing the C4 case. "This is contact, hostile contact." We spent the rest of the day in a state of siege. They didn't charge, they were too smart for that. They used psychological warfare. They threw rocks, massive ones, landing just close enough to terrify us Slav. They let us see them, flashes of movement, massive 9-foot-tall shapes moving between the trees. They were hurting us, penning us in, waiting for night. Night fell like a hammer. The temperature dropped and the fog rolled back in. We were blind. "They're coming," Eleanor said, her eye glued to the thermal scope. "I see them. Oh God, Daniel, there are dozens of them. They're lining up." "This is an assault," Carter said, his voice flat. He was rigging the C4 blocks to the trees around our camp, creating a defensive perimeter. "They're using tactics." The thudding started again, but this time it was close. "Tiagaren 2-5. To Tiagaren to Diop, Anor's to Zafrit." I know. It's Bichite Dum. DK. Thud. It was coming from under our feet. "They're digging," I said, a new cold terror gripping me. "They're coming up from below." The ground erupted. 10 feet from our tent, the earth just exploded upward, a shower of dirt and rock. And a hand, a pale, 5-fingered, clawed hand shot out of the hole. It was one of the Grendel, the diggers. It was followed by another, and another. They were under our perimeter. "Light 'em up," Carter roared. The clearing exploded in muzzle flashes. Carter and I fired into the emerging creatures. They shrieked, high-pitched and horrifying, and scrambled out of the holes. They were pale, thin, about 6 feet tall, but they were fast, and they had claws like razors. "They're the shock troops," I yelled, emptying a magazine into one. "They're here to flush us out." "Towards the main line," Carter yelled, firing his shotgun. But it was a diversion. As we focused on the diggers, the main force hit us. A 9-foot alpha burst from the tree line. It was the one from the drone feed, the one we'd seen on the map wall. It moved with a speed that was impossible for its size. It ignored our bullets, the rounds thudding into its thick, matted fur. It wasn't after us, it was after our gear. It grabbed our generator, a 150-pound Honda, and threw it against a tree. The clearing was plunged into total darkness. "Eleanor, flares!" I screamed. She ignited a magnesium flare. The clearing was lit in a blinding chemical white light, and we saw them. We were surrounded. There were at least 20 of the alphas and maybe 40 of the pale diggers. They stood just at the edge of the light, their eyes glowing, their breath pluming. They weren't just attacking, they were studying us. An alpha, the biggest one, stepped forward. It was holding something. It was Carter's pack, which he'd left near the perimeter. It held it up, sniffed it, and then tore it in half with its bare hands. It was a message. "Daniel," Carter said, his voice quiet. He was bleeding. A digger had caught him in the leg. "They're not trying to kill us. Not yet. They're capturing us." He was right. They weren't charging. They were tightening the circle, slowly, methodically. "They want us," Eleanor whispered, her face as white as the flare. "They want to know what we saw. They want to study us." That thought was more terrifying than death. "That's not happening," Carter said. He looked at me, his eyes full of a terrible resolve. "The C4, it's wired to a dead man's switch. You two, you run. Run for the ridge. Don't look back." "Carter, no." I grabbed his arm. "We stick together." "And do what, Daniel? End up in their larder? End up painted on a wall?" He shoved me toward Eleanor. "You're the one who has to warn them." That was always the deal. "Get her out. That's an order." He primed the detonator. "I'll give you a 2-minute head start. Then I'm lighting this place up. Carter, go. Tell them they're digging. Tell them it's too late." I grabbed Eleanor and we ran. We plunged into the dark forest, away from the chasm, scrambling up the rocky ridge that led to the LZ. Behind us, we heard the alphas roar. They knew we were running. We heard them crashing through the woods after us. We ran for our lives. We could hear them, 50 yards behind us. They were toying with us, hurting us, letting us think we could get away. I looked at my watch. 2 minutes. "Get down," I screamed, tackling Eleanor behind a boulder. The world exploded. Carter had used all of it. The blast was massive. It lit up the night like a new sun. The shockwave tore through the forest, ripping trees apart, sending a shower of rock and fire into the sky. We heard the shrieks of the creatures, sounds of rage and agony. The blast bought us our lives. We ran. We didn't stop. We ran for 5 miles, our lungs on fire, our legs numb. We didn't stop until we reached the LZ, a windswept clearing on the top of the ridge. We could hear Jack's helicopter before we saw it. He was early. He was already spinning up. "What happened?" he yelled as we piled in. "They're coming," I screamed. "Get us in the air, now." Jack didn't argue. As the chopper lifted off, I looked down. The forest below us, it was moving. The trees were alive with them. They were pouring out of the chasm, out of the new holes, their howls of rage following us into the sky. We made it back. We were the only survivors. We were taken to a black site, a bunker somewhere under DC. We were debriefed by Alexander Williams in a room full of people with no names. I told them everything. The chasm, the city, the diggers, the map, the digging. Williams just nodded. He wasn't surprised. He played us an audio file recorded in 1973. "Thud, thud, thud. We've known," he said, his voice dead. "We've known for 50 years. We call it geological containment. We thought they were stable. We thought the mountains were their prison." "What do you mean prison?" Eleanor asked. "They're not from here, Doctor," Williams said. "Not originally. The legends, the Native American stories, they say they were driven underground in a great war thousands of years ago. They've been down there, waiting, evolving. The seismic event I started wasn't an earthquake," Williams finished. "It was them. They're breaching. The digging Carter heard wasn't just one tunnel. It's all of them, all at once. They're done waiting. The explosion, your friend's sacrifice, it didn't stop them. It just told them we were a threat. It accelerated their plans." "What are the plans?" I demanded. Williams turned to a massive satellite map on the wall. It was covered in red dots, all over the Appalachian range. They're not just digging one exit, they're opening all of them. The ones they mapped on that wall. He zoomed in. My blood ran cold. The primary excavation vector, the one with the most activity, wasn't pointing at a remote forest. It was pointing directly at the intersection of I-40 and the I-26. It was pointing at Asheville. The secondary one was aimed at the valley holding Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. "My God," Eleanor whispered. "The tourists, the cities, there are millions of people there." "They're not running from a collapse," I said, the terrible truth finally settling on me. "They're invading." "Yes," Williams said, "and the seismic data from the last 12 hours, the digging has intensified. The ground under Gatlinburg is already unstable. We project a full-scale emergence within the next 48 hours. "You have to warn them," Eleanor screamed. "You have to evacuate." Williams just looked at her. "Evacuate what? Millions of people? From a threat we've spent 50 years insisting doesn't exist? How? There's no time. There's no way. We'd cause a panic that would kill more people than the creatures themselves." So that's it. That's the story. That's the truth. I'm telling you this from a hotel room in Charlotte, where they're keeping me until they decide what to do with me. But I know what's coming. I know what Carter died for. The government won't act. They're going to let it happen. They'll call it the Great Appalachian Earthquake of 2024. They'll blame geological instability. They'll send in the National Guard to clean up and contain the survivors. But it will be a lie. It will be an invasion. So this is my warning. The one I filed with the world. If you are in the mountains, if you are in Asheville or Gatlinburg or anywhere in that range, leave. Don't pack. Don't wait. Just get in your car and drive. Because the mountains are hollow and they are full. You won't get an official alert. There will be no warning on your phone. You will just be sitting in your car, stuck in tourist traffic on the bypass, and the ground will open up. And the things that come out, they won't be bears. They will be the things we've been lying about for a century. And they are hungry. There will be no time to escape. The room Alexander Williams left me in isn't a hotel. It's a bunker. It's clean, sterile, and the door has no handle on the inside. Eleanor is in a room down the hall. I can hear her sometimes, crying, sometimes screaming. They're holding us. We're not survivors, we're witnesses. And in their world, witnesses are liabilities. For 3 days I've sat here, watching a bank of monitors they left for me. A courtesy, Williams called it. It's feeds from seismic sensors all over the Smokies. I'm watching the numbers climb. I'm watching the red lines on the map get closer and closer to the blue clusters of civilization. The thudding never stops. Even here, miles away, I can feel it. A low, constant vibration in the concrete floor. B-U-T-O-I-Y-I-E. 2I-What. It's the sound of a civilization digging its own grave. They're not going to let us go. We know too much. We're the ones who've seen the map. We're the ones who've seen their faces. But they made a mistake. They underestimated me. They see a biologist, a man of science. They forgot I was a gatekeeper for 20 years. I know their protocols. I know their back doors. And they left me in a room with a high-speed, secure internet connection. They think I'm writing my official report, the one that will be buried in a vault. They think I'm cowed, broken. They're wrong. I'm writing this. I'm writing my report, the one you're reading right now. I found a vulnerability in their secure network, A hole I helped design 5 years ago to allow for emergency field data uploads that bypasses the primary firewalls. It's not fast, but it's out. It'll hit a dozen servers at once, conspiracy forums, news aggregators, whistleblower sites. They'll trace it. They'll shut it down in minutes, but they can't stop it from spreading. The truth will be out there. The seismic sensors just went red, all of them, from Cherokee to Gatlinburg. The digging, it stopped. My God, it stopped. The monitors, they've switched. It's not seismic data anymore, it's live footage. Traffic cams, national park webcams. They're watching it happen. The feed from the Gatlinburg bypass, the cars are stopped. People are getting out of their cars, pointing. The ground, it's moving. It's not an earthquake, it's hatching. The mountainside is opening. I can hear alarms in the hallway. They know I'm online. They're coming for me. The door handle is rattling. I have to send this. My name is Daniel Hill. I'm 54 years old. I'm a scientist, and I'm telling you this is not a drill. This is not a story. What's coming is not a bear. It's not an unexplained event. It's an emergence. I can hear them pounding on the door. It won't hold. If you read this, if this gets out, don't try to fight them. You can't. Just run. Take your family and run. Run east. Run for the coast. Get away from the mountains. Forget the lies. Forget the containment. Carter was right. It's too late.